Welcome to Becoming Limitless. This is the podcast for entrepreneurs who want to optimize their brain and their body with biohacking. I'm going to teach you how to eliminate brain fog and upgrade your health so you can have more productivity, energy, and growth in your business. I'm your host, Tanessa Shears. Let's jump in. Hey, welcome back to the Becoming Limitless podcast. We're on episode 13 today, and we are talking about the 10 biggest health mistakes we all need to stop making right now. And I know for a fact there is a pretty good chance that we've all probably made at least one or two of the mistakes that I'm going to be going over today. But the point of this podcast is to have this as a resource to help you make sure that you don't make all of these mistakes, because I have been in the health and fitness industry a long time. I have made a lot of mistakes. I have found what has worked, what has not, what has been a waste of time, what has been a good use of time. So my goal basically is just to be like, hey, here's everything I've tried. Here's what I've learned. Don't make this same mistake. I kind of love that idea of always just being able to, it's kind of like if you were on a bike going down the road and you looked behind you to your friend riding on the bike behind you and was like, watch out for that pothole. Don't fall in that hole over there. And it's always just looking back and seeing who you can help along the way. So if you can take away even one mistake from this out of the 10 I'm going to be sharing with you, then we have a win. But just before we get started, have you downloaded my Entrepreneur's Playbook, my 12 ways to biohack your energy? If you are feeling like you're waking up in the morning tired, if you're feeling like it needs a cup of coffee to get you going, or you're just really having to drag through your day, you have to download this. You gotta go to tanessashears.com/playbook and download this guide. It gives you my 12 best tips on how to biohack your energy so you can wake up and have really productive mornings and feel full of energy. So don't forget to get that. It's at tanessashears.com/playbook. So I want to tell you a bit about how I got into health and fitness. When I was in high school and I had to do mandatory PE, I was the girl who hated going to PE. For me, nothing was worse than being a 17-year-old girl or a 15-year-old girl that had to get sweaty and then sit in class all day long. Between my PE block and my next block, there was only a 5-minute break. I didn't have enough time to shower or to put on more deodorant. And I just hated the whole process. And it really kind of started off this friction-based relationship with exercise for me. And I would even, show up to school late on purpose so I could skip running laps of the driveway with everyone else. And it really, unfortunately, did not get me off to a good start with fitness. But I got into it. I fell in love with it actually by accident only a couple years later. I was hired as a lifeguard and I taught swimming lessons, hours and hours of swimming lessons back to back. And you can imagine being in the water teaching swimming lessons, it gets really cold. And I remember being huddled up all the time. And I'd be so sore from shivering and being tight at the end of the day that I was just like, this is terrible. So I was presented with the opportunity to become an aqua fitness instructor. And what would happen is if I taught these aqua fitness classes, then I wouldn't have to teach swimming lessons as much. And I was like, oh my gosh, sign me up, anything to get me out of swimming lessons. So as I went through the certification process to become an aqua fitness instructor, I discovered that I really loved learning about the body and about exercise and what movement did for us and creating a community around fitness. And it was so fascinating to me that literally I walked into university and switched my major overnight. I switched from a major in communications because I wanted to be a journalist or a news anchor. Overnight, I switched to a major in biomedical physiology and kinesiology. I wanted to learn all about exercise, food, how it affected the body. I was obsessed. And that kind of became the evolution of my career, which started teaching aquafit from a pool deck only to escape being freezing cold in the water. And it turned into this love of fitness, which expanded into a highly successful career in personal training, teaching boot camps, and group fit, to growing this online platform in which I work with entrepreneurs every single day to help them create energy and focus by taking care of their health. And I do this from a place of a lot of experience because I've tried everything. I have followed enough influencers. I've done enough free programs. I've paid for programs. I entered bodybuilding competitions. I downloaded free guides. And I learned after teaching to so many different clients and being on the floor, thousands of hours working one-on-one with clients. I have learned so much from teaching fitness and health, and it has been over 13 years, hundreds of hours working in the industry, and even more teaching group classes since I became certified in 2008. And not only on top of that, I have read dozens of books. If you go back to episode 10, you can actually get a sneak peek of the top 7 biohacking health and fitness books that I recommend that have changed the course of the education I have about my health. But like I said, 13 years at this, I've learned a lot, I've seen a lot, I've worked with a lot of people, I've discovered what works and what doesn't work, and I'm going to be sharing with you today the top 10 biggest health mistakes that we all need to stop making right now that I have personally made myself and learned from so that I could give you this episode today to make sure you don't make these same mistakes. Mistake number 1 is thinking that weight loss and weight gain are all about calories in versus calories out. I fell victim to this mindset at one point, especially when I was training to do my bodybuilding competition back in 2014. I thought it was just so simple. If you eat less than you move, you lose weight. But what I did not know was what I learned from the book, The Obesity Code by Dr. Jason Fung. If you haven't read that, go check it out. Is that calories in, calories out is only a small part of the story. It does not take into account hormones. It does not take into account that the food choices you eat affect your hormones. It does not take into account the fact that these hormones drive up the set point of your body weight or drive it down and make it harder or easier to gain and lose weight. And I've also learned that having chronically high inflammation from eating crappy food, from over-exercising, from lack of sleep, these are all things that drive up our body's set point weight. And we are not just looking at a simple math equation of calories in, calories out when it comes to losing weight, but you are technically working against the set point that your body thinks it is safest to maintain based on the environment you have placed it in, whether that be the amount of food you've eaten, if you've smoked, how much you drink, how much you move, how much you sleep over the last years of your life. So what I want to recommend to you is to take some time to look into the quality of the food that you're eating, because we know that 100 calories of a salad affects your body in a much different way than 100 calories of a cheeseburger. And that mainly comes down to how it stimulates your hormones and also how it affects the inflammation in your body. And I've done a whole earlier episode all about the food rules to help eliminate inflammation. So go back to that episode if you haven't had the chance to check it out yet. If learning how your hormones and how food work together and creating a plan that not only supports a healthy body, but a healthy body weight, this is something I directly work with clients one-on-one with right now. So if this is like, hey, I need help with this, just reach out to me. I'm really easy to get a hold of. Instagram, email, go onto my website and send me a message, and we can always talk about if this is a good fit and if I can help you set you up on the right track so that you're not always battling against hormones, because it's not about calories in, calories out. Mistake number 2 is when we begin thinking that more exercise is always better and less exercise is bad. We have this very warped view of exercise and its purpose in our lives. And there's this bizarre conception that we need to beat ourselves silly in the gym in order to be quote unquote healthy and to take care of ourselves and to be fit. One of the things I've discovered is that our body responds so much more effectively to higher amounts of daily activity than it does just small spurts throughout the day. And the term I love to use is called an active couch potato. That basically means you spend all day sitting, you barely get off the couch, and then you go exercise really hard for an hour to hour and a half and return to sitting. I love to encourage the idea that our bodies were meant to move. So monitoring something like your daily activity and maybe the amount of miles or kilometers you've walked or the steps you've taken, and using that as the bar for your activity instead of how many 1 hour spurts you get per week. And now I recognize that many of our jobs are seated. So using something like this really helps to make sure that you're getting up while you're sitting during the day and taking a time to stretch and moving around a bit. And you're really looking at your life from a holistic perspective, not just a go to the gym, bang out an hour, and go back to sitting down. Another misconception that falls under this more is better for exercise is that we need to be so sore after our workouts, and that how sore you are is a direct reflection of the quality of your workout. And not true at all. Soreness has to do with, it does have to do with how hard you push, but it also has to do with your body adapting, whether that means you really went up in weight or you're doing a new movement pattern or a new activity. There are so many factors to go into that. So if you are not sore, it does not mean you had a bad workout. In fact, if you are sore after every workout over a long period of time, this actually drives your recovery and something called your heart rate variability down. And that is a way that we measure the amount of stress our body is under. So if you are constantly keeping your body in a stressed out, broken down state where it is constantly needing to recover, I would highly recommend you check, because your cortisol and your stress is always going to be up, and that is going to prevent muscle gain and prevent you from losing fat. Also, there is this idea that we need to do so much activity, but at the end of the day, what I have found is the most effective is 2 to 3 weight training days per week, usually full body, with 1 long walk a week, movement during the day, and maybe 1 day where you do some high intensity interval training. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's about creating more activity in your life than these short periods where we go to the gym, beat ourselves silly, and then come home, be so sore that our stress levels go up and we can barely move the next day. Mistake number 3 is going to be following a diet plan you downloaded on the internet. Somebody gave you a cookie cutter one that you borrowed from your friend. Basically following a diet plan that was not created by you. The reason for this, it is not personalized. You don't know how these foods affect you. If you've listened to my episodes in the past, you know that different foods affect people differently. For me, quinoa and broccoli make me bloat. They give me stomach aches. But if I had just followed every health plan out there, I'd be eating broccoli and I'd be eating quinoa and I'd be walking around with a lot of gastrointestinal distress. That's not what we want, right? So we want to make sure it's personalized to the foods that you choose to eat. The second reason why I wouldn't follow a diet plan is because you don't know how to change it. So what this means is, if you don't understand what went into creating the plan, you don't know how to go to a restaurant and pick something that fulfills the same macronutrient needs, that fulfills the same protein and fat and fiber needs, right? Like you're basically looking at it, and if you can't eat exactly at that, there is a much larger chance that you're just going to throw the full thing out. The other reason I don't love following a diet plan is because it's very boring and very short-lived. I don't know anyone who has ever stuck to a diet plan verbatim, long-term, eating the same meals and the same foods day in and day out, and not eventually got bored, started changing things, and had it not work. We want to be able to find a plan and find someone that can show you how to eat and why you pick certain foods. Like, this meal is more balanced when you add half an avocado in, because it hits your fiber and it hits your fats as well. And then you want to know that if you go out to dinner with friends or you go to a restaurant, that you know what kind of meals are substitutes so that you're getting enough of what your body needs. So I highly recommend find a way of learning how, whether it be through this podcast or through education on your own or through working with someone like me, to help you understand what your relationship is with food and how you need to be incorporating it into your lifestyle. Now, coming off of that mistake is mistake number 4, which is thinking it's the diet's fault when we fail. How many times have we heard, it was too restrictive, I didn't like the foods that were on it, it was too boring? We always make it the diet's fault when we fail. Here is a breaking news, which most of us aren't going to like. It's never the diet's fault if you don't follow it. Any diet that you follow, whether that be eating vegetarian, carnivore, keto, whether you eat paleo, whether you eat whatever the plan is that you follow, it is just a list of foods. It is just a list of thoughts and ideas and beliefs on how we should eat. That list of foods or that list of guidelines is not what makes you fall off, stay on, struggle with it, fight, have to use willpower, none of that. It's your beliefs about yourself. It's how you make decisions. It's about your ability to stick to something. And it has nothing to do with the foods that are on the list. It literally has to do with the way we are thinking about that list of foods. So before we say, no, it didn't work, I didn't like that, ask yourself why. And it's usually not because there was a tomato on the plant. It's because we have thoughts that make us feel uncomfortable when we are having to choose something different. Because if we want to change our life, it requires change. And change inevitably breeds discomfort. We have to be willing to go through that discomfort. And if we don't want to go through that discomfort, we can't blame it on the food or the diet. We have to recognize that that's something in ourselves that we need to work on and grow as a skill, because change requires change. Change requires discomfort. Being able to sit through that discomfort and being able to learn about yourself and how you view the world and how you think is actually what is going to make that food plan something you stick to or something you don't. Mistake number 5, we've actually kind of covered, but I thought it was so important that it deserved it to be its own mistake. Being an active couch potato. So we talked before that more exercise isn't necessarily better. Well, one of the biggest mistakes I see across the board is being an active couch potato, and that just looks like working out 1 hour per day and sitting the rest. We want to be moving all day, every hour. Get up and take some steps. So if you want to aim for something simple like 5,500 steps a day, that's a nice way to just add that little bit of activity into your day. A really good starting place is to aim for 250 steps per hour. That looks like 2 to 2.5 minutes of walking. The really nice thing is on the Fitbit Inspire heart rate model that I have, it's like one of those fitness tracking watches on my Fitbit. Every time I get to 10 minutes to the hour, so whether that be 1250, 150, 250, it buzzes at me if I haven't gotten off my butt and taken my 250 steps. So while this is a really nice feature, you can set an alarm on your own phone just to go off and make sure you're getting up and getting moving. This not only contributes to just better mental health, it helps reduce inflammation, and it's how our bodies are supposed to move. We're not meant to be sitting all day. So another way to help overcome being an active couch potato is to invest in a standing desk. Now, this doesn't need to be fancy. Like I do have one. I have I forget what the model is. It's from IKEA, and it's got an electric motor on it, and it goes up and it goes down. And I do love it because it allows me the opportunity to stand and change my working position. But if you don't have that, it's really simple to get a couple of books and to put them up on like a higher counter or something like that and move your keyboard and be able to work from a different position. Just having this opportunity really infuses a lot more energy into the day. And the last recommendation I have to get out of being an active couch potato is take walking meetings or walking phone calls. There's no rules that say that you have to have all of your meetings and all of your calls sitting down. If you have the opportunity to get out and get moving, do it. It's something that will really change the quality of your life. All right, we are halfway through our 10 biggest health mistakes to stop making so far. Have you made any of those before? I've made all of them. So are there any of those 5 mistakes that you can look at as red flags so you don't make those same mistakes? Again, this is the whole point about learning and being able to reduce the amount of time you get results in by learning from the experience of others. So let's hop into mistake number 6. We often fall into the trap that we think that whole grains and whole wheat means healthy. I'm going to bust this myth for you right here. Not always true. The fact is that whole grains and whole wheat have a very strong effect on the hormone insulin. And I've talked about this in previous podcast episodes I've done, But when you eat things that are high in processed carbohydrates, our insulin goes up. And what this does is it actually causes our body to store body fat. It causes inflammation and it causes brain fog. And this is something that we cannot have if we want to be sharp and focused in our businesses. The interesting thing is, in Europe, flour actually is not as problematic as it is here in North America. Way back, wheat berries, so the type of plant that we actually get flour from, it used to be tall. But what often happened was the plant would fall over and they would lose a lot of the crop yield. So it was genetically modified to become a short, fat plant. So it produced a high yield without actually tipping over and losing all of that. So that process actually changed the structure of the flour here, which makes our flour here in North America much different in its effect on insulin. So this combination of having this genetically modified process of growing flour in combination with the processing of the wheat berry into a very fine powder, if we go back to Science 9, we know that anything with a very high surface area that is ground down has a higher absorption rate, right? And it increases the surface area of the flour. What this does is it allows the sugar to be absorbed quicker from the flour and create a larger spike in insulin. And like we said, large spikes in insulin over time lead to weight gain. They lead to increased set point of our weight. It leads to inflammation and it leads to brain fog. So just because something says whole grain or whole wheat does not necessarily mean it's in the best interest of our health. We need to be looking at a holistic hormonal level and not just the marketing by the government agencies that want us to buy into certain agricultural industries. Now, in complement to that is mistake number 7, thinking that a label on the way you eat makes you healthier, whether that be gluten-free or vegan or vegetarian or paleo, whatever it is not a label that actually makes you healthier. Because if I actually look at the types of foods eaten by certain, diet industries, gluten-free products are made up of things like rice flour and almond flour and tapioca starch. And some research studies actually show that these type of flours drive insulin up higher than if you'd have just eaten regular flour in the first place. So the only difference is that like things like rice flour and almond flour and tapioca starch, they just don't have the protein gluten in it that some people are sensitive to. But it has that similar effect on insulin, which can actually create, like I said in the last mistake, weight gain and inflammation and all that kind of stuff. So buying gluten-free, if you don't need gluten-free products, may actually be doing you more damage than good. The same way we could look at something like cheesies. Cheesies are technically vegetarian. You can probably find gluten-free version, and I know for a fact that you can find gluten-free, vegan, and vegetarian cookies, but at the end of the day, you're still eating cookies, which in itself is not a whole food. And while there are, yes, some places for those in our diet, and we do allow for, meals that we enjoy sometimes, as a whole, just because something on the grocery store shelf is labeled vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, whatever labels they put on there does not mean it is a healthy option. And it is our responsibility to look deeper into the labels and make sure that what we're choosing is actually good for us. So if you choose any of these lifestyles, whether that honestly be paleo or vegan or vegetarian, choose it for personal values or ethical reasons, not just because you're perceiving it as something that is a health trend that you saw in a documentary. You have the responsibility to ensure that no matter what way you choose to eat, that you are not missing out on certain nutrients or like protein or vitamin B12 because of a way you're eating. I often think that if we choose to add or eliminate certain foods from our diet, we need to make sure that we are consciously finding ways to make sure that we are eating a full spectrum of vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, and we are not deficient. All right, let's move on to tip number 8. This one, we know, if you listen to my podcast at all, you know this is near and dear to my heart. It is the mistake that you think that you don't need to sleep or your sleep is fine. I have only one question for you. If you do not track your sleep, how the heck do you know if you are getting quality sleep if you are not tracking it accurately? How do you know you're getting enough deep sleep or dream sleep? How do you know that you're not waking up in the middle of the night and it's disrupting your sleep? How do you know that your circadian rhythm is consistent? All of these things are super important in order to make sure that we have low inflammation, low brain fog, so we are able to show up sharp, focused, and productive in our businesses. If you are showing up feeling tired all the time, I guarantee you are not being effective with your time. So I believe it is a very minor investment to invest in a basic sleep tracker. And it can, honestly, the basic Fitbit Inspire heart rate, the one that I have, it costs $120 Canadian, and it can go on sale for $90. And I know in the US dollars, that's like $90 can go on sale for $60. And it's such a small investment when you look at the return that you get in your business and your energy when you are properly managing your sleep. And I've done a whole bunch of episodes on quality sleep. So it's a mistake to think that your sleep is fine if you don't actually know. Take some time, invest in a tracker, and find out. Mistake number 9 is not being aware of your blue light exposure. So I would love for you to refer back to episode 10 of the podcast that we did, because I did a very in-depth dive about blue light, its effect on your sleep, on your brain, and your circadian rhythm. Essentially, blue light is a spectrum of light that's emitted from any of our technology devices, our computers, tablets, phones, any type of screen that we look at. But what we don't know is that this constant blue light exposure, while we sit at our desks all day and while we're on our phone all the time, it damages and wears out these little energy producing cells called mitochondria. When these cells are damaged, they actually produce less energy. And this leads to things like brain fog and fatigue. And on top of that, constant blue light from our screens, it prevents melatonin release. And that is our sleep hormone, which can disrupt our circadian rhythm. So I highly recommend that you figure out what's going on with our blue light by listening into episode 10. I give like 6 or 7 action-packed tips on to reducing your blue light exposure. Everything from getting a pair of blue light blocking glasses for the day, a red pair at night, for apps that you can install on your phone and your computer, everything to help you really limit your blue light. Because we are often unaware that blue light's even a problem for us until we take it out and see how good we really feel. So if you don't know about blue light yet and you aren't proactively limiting your exposure at nighttime, first head back to episode 10 and make sure that you're not making this mistake. And here we are. Tip number 10. The 10th mistake that we don't want to be making is to think that it is normal to feel tired and stressed out all of the time. If you look around at your friends and people you work with, and they are tired all the time, and everyone feels stressed out all the time, we just start to think that maybe this is normal. Everyone seems to wake up tired in the morning. Everyone seems to have a crash around 2 p.m. Everyone seems to be overwhelmed with work. I want you to know that thinking this is the mistake. It's not normal to feel like that all the time. So the first thing I'm going to suggest for you is that you check on your sleep and listen through some of these podcasts to really help you manage your sleep so that you're not feeling so tired. There are so many solutions to have you waking up in the morning, feet on the ground, full of energy. And sometimes we just don't know that that's a solution that's available to us. But I'm going to tell you that the episodes that I've done on sleep in this podcast will be highly effective for helping you with your energy. Something else you can do is to work with a coach, whether that be a life coach or a health coach or someone like me, and help you realize where these sources of stress are coming from and give you effective solutions and strategies on dealing with them. So I'm always from the mindset that inflammation and brain fog is dealt with a physical and a mental component. Part of it is working on your ability to come out of fight or flight and to manage your thinking and your mindset. And then you support it with proper nutrition, proper sleep, and movement, and making sure you are working daily in an environment that supports proper brain function and ability to have great health. So if you are working with someone on this, they'll be able to see all of the areas that you are letting your energy slip through the cracks. So I highly recommend, if this is something you struggle with, if you're always tired, always stressed out, take that step and invest in yourself and work with a coach. The another thing that you can do is if you find you're always stressed out and tired is purposefully take time to unwind. Take time to turn your brain off. Take time to enjoy the life that you're creating with yourself. That's why we're running a business. It's so that we can get our time back. So make sure that while you are in this time, you are present and you are enjoying it, and that it is part of the life you are creating on purpose, whether that be spending time with family, cooking, going on walks, moving your body, reading, meditating, whatever it is. Take that time to unwind, because without it, you will end up in this chronic state of fight or flight. Your cortisol hormone will always be stressed and high, and you will eventually burn out. So make sure that you are taking time to take care of yourself. So like I've said, those are the 10 biggest health and fitness mistakes that I personally have made and would love to highlight so that you are not making these yourself. It was an interesting process actually going back through my journey and asking myself, what are all the mistakes that I made that cost me time, cost me health, cost me energy? What were they? And coming up with this list was actually quite interesting. I could almost do a whole second episode on another 10 health mistakes that I have made, but I found that these ones were the most important, where if you were to skip past these mistakes, you would be so much further ahead than I was at that same stage. So if this is something that's super interesting to you and you want to hear the next 10 tips, leave me a note on Instagram. You can find me at Tanessa Shears, or you can take a screenshot of you listening to this episode, post it in your stories, and tag me. I always love to see where you guys are listening. Like for me, I always listen to podcasts either on the road or while I'm in the shower or cleaning up the house. And it's a great way, I find, to invest in your time, educate, learn new things, advance your life forward, invest in your personal development, and help move your life forward. It's a lot of fun. So thank you again for tuning in to this episode. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so I know that you're listening to this episode. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'm looking forward to talking to you next time. Bye. Ready to begin each day feeling energized and focused? I'd love to work with you one-on-one. In my Becoming Limitless program, you're going to learn how to optimize your brain and body with science and biohacking so you can be highly productive and grow your business faster. Join me over at TanessaShears.com/work with me. I'll see you there.